President Trump and his legal team, they are ratcheting up their attacks in the Mueller probe. Here's one of his attorneys, Rudy Giuliani.
I think the special prosecutor has stepped over the line now with the way he's intimidating people in order to tell what he believes is his version of the truth. You know, after a while, this kind of pressure can create the risk of tainted testimony.
He even went so far as to say it was un-American what Mueller was doing. Now, Trump, he went on yet another Twitter tirade today about, of course, Mueller and Michael Cohen. And he started with Cohen. Michael Cohen asked judge for no prison time. He lied for this outcome and should, in my opinion, serve a full and complete sentence. Trump went on. I will never testify against Trump. This statement was recently made by Roger Stone, essentially stating that he will not be forced by a rogue and out-of-control prosecutor to make up lies and stories about President Trump. Nice to know that some people still have guts, with all exclamation points. And one more. Bob Mueller and his out-of-control band of angry Democrats don't want the truth. They only want lies. The truth is very bad for their mission. Now, all of this obviously coming in the wake of Michael Cohen's plea deal and renewed cooperation with Bob Mueller. Here to talk about that and more, former federal prosecutor Stanley Torridian. Thanks and welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rich.
Talk about the significance of Cohen's testimony and in the not so coincidental context of the president's written answers. It seemed to be a domino, and there seems to be more that are about ready to fall.
Yeah, I do think that there are the dominoes are about to fall here. I get the feeling, reading the information that Cohen pled guilty to of lying to Congress. You get the feeling with what's going on that Mueller is coming to the crescendo here in what's happening. I think it's important because we now know that the president did have knowledge of things going on in Russia, business knowledge, not collusion, but knowledge of things going on in his business in Russia, which is a different story than the president had been telling publicly. We also heard from Rudy Giuliani earlier that the written responses that President Trump gave to Mueller were consistent with what Cohen said. So it's a little bit inconsistent here what the president's saying.
Not the first and last time we'll have the inconsistencies, but to me, and again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, since Mr. Whitaker became acting attorney general, he became privy to the goings-on with the investigation were given, obviously, Jeff Sessions' recusal. It seems that the president's getting a window into the scope of the investigation and seemingly the paper trail. To me, it was significant that Cohen obviously is a flawed witness, but there seems to be a ton of documents, possibly audio tapes, and like I said, a paper trail also with the accountant that was involved, and so many other sources that he seems to have an on-edge president because he realizes potentially that Mueller's got the goods.
Sure. So, you know, I don't know whether or not Matt Whitaker is sharing anything, Justice Department sharing anything. We do know, at least according to reports, that Paul Manafort and his team had a joint defense agreement with the president, which is very unusual to have a convicted person having a joint defense agreement with someone who was a third party in essence. But you know, even on this, the Cohen lying to Congress, that was not just Michael Cohen saying to Bob Mueller and Mueller's team, "Oh, I lied to Congress." Mueller had documentation, third-party documentation, other individuals or documentation that enabled him to set forth that information in that document that Cohen pled guilty to. So there's a lot out there. We do know that there are a number of defendants or potential defendants who have been talking with the president and the president's team. We saw, interestingly, Cohen in his plea on the lying to Congress indicated that he had been talking to the president and the president's legal team while he was preparing all that information. So we do know that there's a back and forth that's taking place. I'm sure that whatever documentation the Trump organization's turned over, the president has and his team have access to, and you know, so that he knows, his team knows that what documentation the government has.
Now, in terms of the allegations you heard from Rudy Giuliani and others, I haven't met anybody that formerly is a federal prosecutor or U.S. Attorney's Office who would ever attach fraud, rogue, whatever the language surrounding Mueller. it's amazing. Regardless of the political background somebody comes in, they all say if you're looking for an unimpeachable person here as a straight arrow without a political motive, you're talking Bob Mueller. Is that your same take?
That is Bob Mueller. Bob Mueller is Jimmy Stewart. And Mr. Smith goes to Washington. I mean, Bob is playing it by the book. And what's very interesting here is that unlike many other investigations where the media is picking up the government side of the story, all we're hearing from the government is when there's actually something that takes place in court. And frankly, I think it's been to the detriment of Mueller and the special counsel's office. We've seen these statistics. I think that 46% of people don't trust Mueller, and only 41% of people don't trust President Trump.
And the numbers are starting to skew on that, but you're right, there still is a division.
There's a vacuum. I mean, the President Trump and his team are conveying things to the public without any pushback from the special counsel's office until there actually is something that happens in court.
Your guess, and it's only a guess, and you hazard a timeline here that a lot of people have said before, January 1, we're going to see something, obviously this week being dominated, remembering the late president. What do you think the report is going to be? And it's not a political document, obviously, but how far-reaching do you think it goes and how far back? Is it two specific tracks? This is only about collusion, this is only about obstruction, or is it more of a macro story that is consumable for the American public?
So I think it's going to be more of a macro story. Probably the analogy I would come up with is that there's a process whereby federal grand juries can do reports, investigate things, and not return indictments, can just do reports on things. And there usually you see, again, it's going to be consistent with what the special counsel's mandate is as to what he can be looking at. But I think you're going to see a narrative of what facts are out there, what they were uncovered, and what they didn't uncover. I mean, again, I think Mueller will put forward things in an objective way, and if he has something, he'll lay it out. If he's missing something, we'll see that too.
Thank you so much.
My
I appreciate it. All right, when we come back, yet another government shutdown, believe it or not, is looming. And yet again, the president, he says it could be a good thing, playing chicken with Dems on the Hill when it comes to funding for that border wall. A former congressman will join us on set to talk about how Democrats could play this and how this all could play out.